Welcome to part 12 of Crochet Basics. This video will be addressing gauge. This is something that is very, very important if you're making a garment, or even if you're making something like a tablecloth that you want to fit a certain size. I'm going to give you some examples. What happens when you proceed with the project without acknowledging the gauge, without taking the time to make a little gauge swatch. We're going to pretend I'm the designer and you're following my pattern here. I'm asking you, maybe I'm going to make a baby sweater. I'm asking you to buy this certain type of yarn, the brand and the weight and whatever, or to use a certain type of yarn of that weight. And I'm asking you to make a gauge swatch using a size H hook or a 5mm hook. And I tell you to chain 12 and to do 11 single crochets on that foundation chain and to make 9 rows of those 11 stitches. So that's what this would look like. And then I tell you that your width should be approximately 3 inches. Okay? And I tell you the height of the piece should be approximately 2 inches. And so you decide, ooh, that's a cute little baby sweater, or cute baby booties, or whatever it is that I'm making. And you don't have a size H hook, or you just totally didn't even see that part in the supplies needed. And so you used, I'm going to put this here. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and put a stitch marker in here to indicate that this is my pattern swatch that you need to duplicate. Let's say you went ahead and decided to use the same yarn, but a size F hook, a 3.75mm. And if you continue on following the pattern without making the gauge square, you're going to be disappointed to find out that it's really, really small. You'll see that my width on here is approximately 2¼ inches. So that's quite a bit smaller than the 3 inches that I wanted you to make. Just imagine how much smaller that would be if it were a sweater. Maybe it would fit a little doll, not an actual human child. Let's see what the width is. It's a little under 2 inches. So the height of your project might be similar, but your width is going to be way off. Well, let's take that to another extreme and say you use the same yarn again, but now you've chosen to use your size J hook. And now this project, whatever it is you're making, is just huge. Maybe you're making a baby hat. Oh, that hat turned out so huge. It would fit a 10-year-old, not this baby. Okay, well, let's do the gauge swatch and see how close you are to the designer's swatch. And the designer is showing you what his or her tension is, and that's what you want to come closest to. So this one is really almost at 3½ inches here on our width. And let's see what our height is of the rows, the 9 rows. We're at 2¼ It's a little bit taller. So when I take my pieces here, get these little yarn tails out of the way, and I match up that lower edge and the side edge, you can see how much larger that is. It becomes really noticeable when I put this smaller piece on here. See that? 1, 2, and 3. So gauge is really, really important. It's important to use the size yarn, and if at all possible, even the same brand yarn, because there can be differences between brands, between what one brand calls worsted weight and what another brand calls worsted weight. It does make a difference, and so if your project isn't turning out like you had expected it to, that may be a reason why as well. Let me show you what happens if you got your hook size right. You made sure in the supplies list to have your size H 5mm hook. But let's say you already had some yarn that you wanted to use. Hey, it's the same color. Why not? You're going to get something either really large or really small next to what you had maybe anticipated making. Again, this is my designer's swatch. This is showing the tension that I worked with, and that's what you need to match if you want to duplicate my results. If you want to make my pattern, let's match that up. And you can see what a big difference that is. So in this particular instance, if I was making a baby hat out of this yarn, following the pattern where I use this yarn, it's going to be huge. It's going to be so much larger than what I had expected. We'll set that aside and we'll go to another ridiculous type of an extreme. Let's just say that instead of using the yarn that was recommended in the pattern, that I chose to use my size 10 crochet thread. First of all, the look is going to be completely different, isn't it? That doesn't look anywhere near the same as this. Size-wise, I'm not even sure how that would match up. It's going to be a little smaller. It's not even all the way down to the bottom here, but you can see that. It's going to end up being really small. So if I were making a little baby sweater out of that, thought, oh, how cute, let's use this thread. I might get something that will fit, again, a little doll, but not the little baby, the human child. So that's just showing you your supply list is an important thing to pay attention to, as well as your gauge. You might get your supplies correct. You might get your yarn correct. You might get your hook size correct. And you might still end up, instead of getting something this size, you might get something this size, the large. What that means is you need to adjust your hook size till you are able to get a gauge that matches that of the designers. All right, that might mean going down one hook size and maybe going down 2 hook sizes. It just depends on your personal tension. It's almost like a fingerprint. Every crocheter is different. It depends on how they hold their yarn, how loose, relaxed their hands are, how tall they pull the hook up and the stitches up. Everything is dependent on each person's style. So if you are not getting the same measurements that the designer has told you in the pattern to expect by making the little sample swatch, go up or down in hook size. If your little sample swatch is a lot smaller, try going up a hook size, maybe even 2 hook sizes if need be. The other thing that I wanted to share with you, the value in doing the gauge swatch, not only will you have a far greater chance of duplicating the pattern designer's efforts, you have a little piece here. If you bought enough yarn, which I would do, I would definitely plan on extra so that you can do this, you can run this through your laundry and see how that affects your little swatch, if it shrinks or gets pulled all out of shape or something like that. If the colors run, it's just a good idea to take that time. I know, it's kind of hard when you get excited about starting a new project, but it's worth the effort to make that gauge swatch. Go ahead and launder it. If it's a longer swatch, go ahead and hang it up to dry and see if it stretches at all. You're going to see in a small little piece of fabric how the larger piece of fabric is going to react when you give it its care and keep. So that's what is important to know about gauge, and I encourage you all to not ignore that very important little bit of direction that's included in a pattern. Thanks. I hope you'll join me for the next step in the Crochet Basics series. We're going to be talking about weaving in your ends, and I will show you several ways to go about and weave in your ends at the end. That way you don't have these little strings hanging off your project. All right, join me then. Bye-bye.